tips, tools, and advice you need to optimize your life with care. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to additional income by engineering your choices around your ideal lifestyle, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join us as we unpack unconventional ideas and methods to give you more freedom and flexibility. Let's escape the rat race together and live with intention. Let's learn how others are making it pay with their side hustles. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of This Is My Side Hustle. Today I'm going to be talking about working from home benefits and hacks. So what I mean by benefits is I'm going to go over obviously all of the reasons why you might want to look into working from home. And I'm also going to talk about benefits that you may need if you're going to decide to work from home. For instance, health insurance, retirement plans, and how you can pay yourself back with those different kinds of benefits and what different options are, maybe what some of them how some of them might benefit you, hence the name benefits. But, if you're working from home and you're not employed or you're not an employee of another company and you're self-employed, you need to figure out what the best options are for you based on your own circumstances and also your budget based on your income. But I'm going to give some options for that. But I also want to talk about some of the benefits that come from working from home. One of the first ones I can think of, and I'm kind of just going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but please stick with me. Right now that I'm recording this on February 12th, I usually record these more ahead of time of when I release them, but I've been tracking this whole coronavirus thing for 6 to 8 weeks, pretty much since it was first not even on the radar. I follow some sites that talk about what's going on in other countries, not necessarily just the United States, for my news, and not mainstream media. That's kind of how I get my news. It's kind of from pretty cringy old style websites, but then I have to follow the rabbit trail and verify things for myself. But I feel that's the best way to get your news, is not through mainstream journalists or channels that most people know about, or even what most people would consider mainstream news sites. I feel like you really need to dig to figure out what's going on and get your information from independent journalists. So I do that, and I heard about the coronavirus right around Christmas time, when it was just not even a blip on anyone's radar. And I've been following it, and I'm not a very anxious person. I'm not really fearful of the future or anything like that. I don't necessarily buy into, fear mongering or anything like that. But this is what concerns me most, I guess I should say. And please bear with me. I'm sorry if you want to skip forward on this until I start talking about normal stuff that you want to hear about, that's fine. But this does come into play with working from home, and I'll tell you why. But I'm really concerned because I've been following what's actually going on from a couple of independent journalists coming out of China, working with a small group of people here in the U.S. who have to the people in China have to use a VPN in order to get through the firewall that China has put up, because China is a communist country, the People's Republic of China, so PRC. The government has put in very strict regulations on what people can use to communicate back and forth. They don't want people getting information out. There's a handful, literally, in a country like China with billions of people, there are less than 200 independent journalists who are basically willing to risk their life to get actual information out there, because the official numbers that you're hearing from the Chinese government are in no way possibly true.
And I've found this out through various sources. So the reason this comes into working from home is at some point in time, I hate to say this, I don't want to be a fearmonger. I'm not really scared of something like this, but it might actually become a necessity that you have to work from home if you have to quarantine yourself. Heaven forbid this horrible virus hits the US or any other countries that you might be listening to. And if you're listening in China and you can hear this, my heart goes out to you. I've been praying about this ever since I heard it. Things are horrible. I feel horrible that your government is shutting everybody up. They're persecuting people for talking about the truth. They're not really doing what I would think would be the best thing to do. They're forcibly quarantining people. They're also not able to properly test everybody. They're running out of supplies, but they're not telling the truth. I feel that if the government of China would come out and ask for help from other countries because they actually tell the gravity of the situation, that other countries would step in to help and they could all work together. But unfortunately, the Chinese government, being a communist country, wants to keep everything out of control, or under control, not out of control. They want to keep things under control. They don't want people speaking out. They don't want the truth to get out, which unfortunately is costing lives. So no matter where you are in the country, I mean, there's obviously some confirmed cases of coronavirus, which has now been renamed, but I'm just going to refer to it as coronavirus. So apparently also the WHO or CDC, and I should have verified this before I looked it up, but I know it's true, that they renamed it to some random number -19. I'm assuming because it started in 2019, last year. However, I'm just going to refer to it as the coronavirus. The reason they renamed it, they said, was because people were actually believing that the coronavirus came from Corona beer. That just kind of speaks to the stupidity of the average person, which I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Look around you. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I did just recently hear that China is starting to try to roll out work from home programs for people who are either completely healthy and stuck in their homes, or quarantining themselves, which is a wise thing to do, a self-quarantine, rather than having the government force you to do it. Obviously, if it's that bad and people are staying at home, there's a reason. But, you know, China has a huge, 17% of our entire world's economy is from China. So if they're shutting down, which they did recently because of the Chinese New Year, but that also because of lots of people getting together and being in close quarters, as you do during holidays, that also tended to spread the virus as it was coming out. So the factories were closed. They thought they would be reopened in a week after this whole coronavirus thing. That's not happening. This is going to have a worldwide effect. Look for the trickle down no matter what country you're in. 17% is almost, 1/5 of our entire world economy is shut down indefinitely. There are way more deaths than what the Chinese government is reporting. In fact, if you Google sulfur dioxide levels of the globe, you can find various weather sites that you can zoom in on the area of Wuhan and look that it is 10 times the normal amount. Sulfur dioxide comes from burning bodies. Other independent journalists have confirmed that these people in the crematoriums have been working pretty much nonstop, sleeping there for only 2 to 3 hours a day for weeks on end. They're breaking down. I've seen screenshotted and translated WeChat chats from people in the crematoriums, nurses in the various hospitals, crying out for help. The people who are still healthy will not be for long if their mental systems break down, if their mental health breaks down, if their immunity is compromised, which it does when you get little sleep and you're under so much stress. People are dying left and right. They're burning thousands and thousands of bodies. The crematoriums which there are many of, are saying they're burning over 100 bodies a day. Okay, so don't believe what you see on TV. This is much more of a crisis than you realize. So that brings me back to my point is you need to get your family prepared. I don't want people to be scared. I hope that this is able to be contained. This could be a very, very dangerous situation. There are also many other things going on right now that really concern me as far as the spreading of this virus, such as the Ethiopian major airline still has not shut down flights back and forth from China to Ethiopia. Now, I'm sure you probably know that Africa has a very substandard, horrible system of healthcare. They don't have anything organized. If the coronavirus breaks out in Africa, it could wipe out like 60% of their population easily. They just do not have the infrastructure in place or resources in place to take care of people. Yet they're still flying people back and forth to China as we speak, February 12th, during all of this. So there's my little rant. There's my little tangent for the day. I'm sorry, I don't mean to scare people, but I want to lead into some of the benefits of working from home and why you really might want to just, even if you're an employee, start bringing this up to your employer. You know, if this situation were to happen here, like, do we have protocols in place for me? Oops, sorry, my alarm just went off. For us to work from home should we need to. I also heard from a reputable source that works in a city council of one of the top, like, mid-size cities in the U.S. So not a huge city, not like New York, California, Los Angeles, but a mid-size city, that they already have plans in place to shut down the school systems if 100 children have been officially diagnosed. So we do have things in place already. Our government is actually preparing, which I'm not sure how I think about. I mean, obviously we want to be prepared. And I think that's great that they have plans in place. And I think that's great. I would put it at 1 kid when you look at the whole, the reach and how easily this thing is spread and how long the incubation period is. It's really, really, really bad. Another thing that they said is that their local government just received tons and tons and tons of hazmat suits, surgical masks, antibacterial disinfectants. You can find images and videos of tanks rolling down the streets in China, spraying disinfectants out the side as if it was a chemtrail, but on the ground. Through all their cities, through all the apartment buildings, they're just spraying basically Lysol in the streets, hoping to somehow disinfect it because they don't really know how this all works at the moment. So anyway, guys, that all being said, I really just wanted to tell you about, one of the current scenarios going on at this moment. China is rolling out this work from home program now because they don't know what else to do. All the factories are shut down. It's probably going to affect our economy further down the road. I'm thinking it's probably going to, whether or not we get a major outbreak in the U.S. of this coronavirus, I do know that it's going to affect us economically. And I kind of have a feeling, and I mean, maybe it's just me, but I kind of have a feeling it's really going to hit the fan this November. So we do have elections coming up. Wouldn't that just be convenient for that to kind of coincide with the big tsunami felt around the world of this economic issues coming from a shut down China? Now, I don't want to scare anybody or, raise alarm or anything like that. I don't think you should make decisions based on fear or anything like that. But I do think it's prudent to, get a side hustle because you don't know when that extra money is going to come in handy. Get a side hustle just to start building up a 6 to 12 month emergency fund. Start setting things aside that you might need if it comes to the point where you cannot go to work for a month or two, or you cannot leave your house for a month or two, what would you do? And putting a plan in place, even if you are employed with your employer ahead of time, I think that would be a good thing to do. If you work in human relations or anything like that, I think it would be a good thing to talk to the managers, talk to the upper management and the executives about like, how could we roll out something if some such scenario would come into play. I do know that in the US, they've already got plans in place to shut down schools. If more than a certain number of kids get infected, they'll shut down the entire school system. So if you have kids, what are you going to do then? How are you going to educate them or, make sure that they're not getting behind if need be, if you also are at home and working? So all of these things, obviously working from home brings so many benefits, but it actually might become necessary in a situation like this. So I know I went on and on about something like this. Like I said, I'm keeping an eye on it. I recorded this a week and a half or so before this is going to actually air. So I don't, know what the next steps are going to be, what the situation will be when this does come on the air, but I highly suggest you look into it and consider some of these things. Another good work from home hack that you could put in place is to get a dedicated spot in your home ready to do this if you already don't have it. You already have a spare bedroom that you could turn into an office and equip it with what you need, or in my case, we took a workroom that was off the garage and converted it into an office. Or even if you just have a little nook and cranny in your bedroom. I would note this though, if you do start a side business and you are hoping to deduct any kind of expenses from your overall utility costs of your home and your mortgage of your home and all of that, you do actually need a dedicated office space. So you can't just write off your kitchen because you happen to work from the kitchen table. If you want to get the benefits from writing those expenses off on your taxes, you do need to have a dedicated space and it needs to be measured. And you can either take the exact measurements of the space or you can take a percentage of the square footage of your home. So if your home office space is 100 square feet and your entire house is 1,000 square feet, then you can take 10%. It's up to you, but I wanted you to keep those things in mind. Another good work from home hack, and I know I've kind of touched on this in the past, but is time blocking. For instance, it's really easy to get distracted from tasks at hand when you have the TV on in the background while you're working, or you're interrupting a current project that you're working on in order to go switch the laundry over or do some dishes. I highly recommend that you do take breaks throughout the day where you could do these things at home, and it's also very convenient to be able to walk a few steps and get things done at home while you're working. But I highly suggest you block those times off. Don't do it while you're in the middle of a project or focused on something, because it's going to take your brain a lot longer to kind of get back into focus on what you were working on, and it's going to take you longer to get things done. So for instance, if I'm doing social media for several clients, I will sit down, I will block that out, I will get it all done, then I'll get up and do something in between around the house, throw in a load of laundry or vacuum or clean the bathrooms, just something for 10 or 15 minutes that won't take that long. And then I go back and let's say I'm then doing some kind of SEO strategy for another client. Then I'll sit down and I'll work on that completely. I will not let myself get distracted or interrupted between that. And then I'll get up, and if I need to move the laundry along or something like that, do the dishes, then I'll do that then. So I really try to do it in that way. Same thing goes with whether I'm going grocery shopping or I'm ordering from Instacart. I will wait until I'm at a little interval. I also like breaking things up throughout the day and having something that distracts you, because not only one, does it help you get up and move if you actually have to get off of your chair or get out of your office, it also gives your mind a little break. I know that if I try to work 5 or 6 hours straight with zero breaks or zero distractions. It actually takes me longer because my brain just starts to kind of slow down. And so I do think it's good to maybe take anywhere from 30-minute to 90-minute very focused work sessions and then stop for 15 minutes to a half an hour to do other things. And same thing goes, and I just mentioned it earlier about having the TV on. I really try not to do that. Sometimes I will listen to podcasts in the background if I am just working on very monotonous tasks that don't require brain power. I will listen to a podcast while I'm perhaps designing graphics for social media or something like that, or formatting a blog post where I don't really have to think about what I'm doing. It's just kind of autopilot. But anytime that I'm really trying to focus on something that requires my full attention, or strategizing or researching or figuring out a problem or figuring out a solution to a problem, then I don't have on a podcast or television or anything like that. I also try to reward myself if I get my things done early and I've gotten all my work done for the day, which is number one priority, and then my housework done for the day. Then I do sometimes sit down and I'll just veg out and watch a show if I have everything else done. But I really highly suggest, if you find yourself feeling unmotivated or lazy, or you're kind of a procrastinator, to not do that until you've literally shut down your working time for the day. You know, if you have set office hours or something like that, and then you stop for the day, then it's totally fine to do that. But if you feel like there might be something else that comes up later and you get sucked into a TV show, unless you have really good willpower, I would suggest just staying away from any kind of entertainment until that time. Now, another hack that goes along with having a dedicated office space is one that I sometimes struggle with, and that is only doing work-related tasks in that space and completely either closing a curtain or shutting the door and not going back into that space when your work is done for the day. And I sometimes struggle with this because I like to get up early and start my day with a cup of coffee at the kitchen table and do some of the things that don't require a lot of brain power, don't require me to stay focused. A lot of the stuff is more like personal things, paying bills, doing my budgeting, things like that, checking emails. But I do that until both of my kids get on the bus, because I have to get up and down, help them with something, maybe braid their hair that they need help with, or make them some breakfast, or pack somebody's lunch because they're running behind or something like that. So I'm up and down. I do all of my kind of mundane tasks that I need to do for the day during that time. And if it is work related, I try not to do it. I try not to focus on anything too important during that time, because my kids, I don't want them to feel like they're a distraction or an interruption for me. I want them to feel like they have my full attention when they're here. So when that happens, once they get on the bus, then I take my work down to my home office. And then when I'm done for the day, I keep my computer and everything down there. Unless, of course, I'm using it for something non-work related later in the day, then I'll bring it back upstairs or something like that. But it just helps to kind of have those boundaries in your life, so that you don't have a problem with work-life balance, so that your work doesn't spill into your personal life and your personal life doesn't spill into your work life and cause problems, distractions, or mistakes. I just find that that's a very helpful way to differentiate between what I'm doing. And I don't know I know most women do tend to think about a million different things at once. I tend to like to be more of a in the box thinker. I find that when I think more like a man, and I can kind of go back and forth between this pretty easily, but when I do compartmentalize and I only focus on one thing at a time, I do tend to be more productive. Multitasking, you may think that you're getting many things done at once, but it often isn't the case, or you're giving substandard efforts or substandard results for the time that you're spending on that. So I hope some of these tips were helpful. This was more of like a generalized thing. I did want to touch base briefly on some benefit options for self-employed people. So I talked about benefits as far as how working from home can benefit you. But I also wanted to talk about benefits as far as things like health insurance and retirement plans and things like that for people who are either self-employed or work from home or have a side hustle or anything that requires an EIN number, any kind of a registered actual business. And there are several options. My favorite for health insurance, which I feel like is the least expensive and the best bang for your buck, is like a health sharing ministry. There are plenty out there that do have religious requirements. They do require you to kind of sign a statement of faith. But there are also plenty out there now, especially as this becomes more and more popular, that aren't faith-based plans. Basically, you pay a certain amount a month. It's usually around $400 to $500 for an entire family, much less if you're just an individual. And you pay into it. You have to have a waiting period. Some are as short as about 6 months. Others are a year to 18 months. But then once something happens, you can then file kind of a claim, and then you get money for that based on everybody's pool of money that they pay into every month. I think this is a fantastic option for people who have families who don't have pre-existing health conditions, don't, normally have any kind of major sicknesses other than your normal colds or flus or things like that. It's great for people who, have children or even are for themselves that you want to be protected in case of an emergency or an unforeseen accident. And I do think it's important to have health insurance. I don't suggest anybody ever go without it, but it's great for somebody who, like our family, we very rarely go to the doctor's office except for physicals for school or sports, maybe once a year. And that's it. I don't take my kids to the doctor's office when they have a cold or a flu or even a fever for a couple of days. We treat them at home the best we can, make them comfortable, and they get over it. Fortunately, the only thing we've really had to go for are things like stitches or broken bones or sprains, things like that, which do happen, especially with kids, So I think it's important to have some kind of protection. But if my husband didn't have full coverage in health insurance from his employer, I would definitely probably consider joining one of these health sharing options. As far as self-employed retirement options go, there's a lot. I did have a blog post kind of detailing all your different options, and I will link that in the show notes because rather than go over all of them again, I feel like the best thing you could do is to just go take a look at that blog post. But there are tons of options. Anybody can do a Roth IRA. So pretty much anybody can open up one of those, but there are actual kind of 401k type programs available for self-employed people. Like I said, I will link to that in the show notes. You do not have to be without benefits if you work from home. There are so many different ways you can benefit from having benefits when you're self-employed or when you work from home. You don't have to worry about things like that. Often it's a lot less expensive than you would expect. Often if you educate yourself, they're better probably than what many employers offer you. And I highly suggest you look into some of them. In fact, if you are employed by somebody else, you might even look into some of these things to incorporate with a side hustle that you have or a side business and negotiate a higher salary from your employer by basically telling them, hey, if I give myself my own benefits through my side business or through my side hustle, then I feel like I'm saving you this amount of money per year. Let's up my salary to this and I will take care of my own benefits. Because you would be surprised how much employers spend every single year on every single employee in order to provide them with benefits. They might increase your salary far more than what it would cost you to implement your own benefits on the side through your side hustle or through your side business. So that is another way where you can kind of tell your employer, hey, here's a win-win situation for you. Let's renegotiate. Let's bump up my salary because I'm going to save you so much more money. Let's say they spend $15,000 a year on benefits for you, and you're able to negotiate a salary raise of $12,000 and tell them, hey, you can get rid of that $15K of benefits. You're going to be saving $3,000 a year if you let me take care of my own benefits, and then you get benefits on your own that end up costing you maybe $8,000 a year. Well, you've just given yourself an automatic $4,000 raise, and you've saved your employer $3,000. So as you can see, this can become quite lucrative for you. And I almost guarantee, and I don't want to put that. I almost guarantee that you can find something as good or better than on your own as far as benefits go than what your employer is offering you. Now, if this makes you feel uncomfortable or you feel like you don't have the knowledge or the know-how to do something like this yet, then set a goal to kind of look over some of these options over the next couple of months so that you can later on go to your employer when you're better educated on how you could possibly negotiate to make it a win-win situation for everybody. So yes, I will link everything I mentioned today in the show notes. I will maybe try to give an update on the next podcast about what I think about this entire coronavirus thing, what the current statistics are looking like, what that might mean to you, what I think you can expect to see as things further progress. And like I said, I'm not trying to be, a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to scare anybody or anything like that, but I feel like it's really important for people to be aware of some of the things that aren't being reported and to be aware of the fact that countries who don't have the same type of free speech and things like we do here are not reporting accurate statistics to you. And you really need to kind of look at things like that from other perspectives, even beyond our mass media in the United States for sure. And just really educate yourself on some of these things because I think it's important so that you can prepare ahead. Think of ways that you could make the most of a bad situation should it come down to it so that you and your family are safe, prepared, and healthy. So I hope this helped you guys. If you have any kind of a suggestion for future topics, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, I would love to hear from you. You can go to makingitpaytostay.com/voicemail. You can get all the details there on how you can apply to be on the show, or leave me a message for future topics you'd like me to talk about or get my opinion on. You can follow me on Instagram at makingitpaylifestyle. And of course, please, as usual, subscribe, like the show, leave a review, share it with your friends. And until next time, this is my side hustle.